as a pastor, no matter the subject that you are teaching, it must produce spiritual growth. The intent of Bible teaching is to produce spiritual growth. You must not just speak. The content must be rich enough to develop people into growth. Don't just speak. Don't just preach. Don't just be excited. Weigh the content. No matter the gyration and the excitement, that's not the target for teaching and preaching, to get people excited and to feel like an orator. No. The intent of Bible teaching and preaching is to produce rich diet that develops people into growth. That develops people into growth. And growth means you will change the way you think. Growth means you will change the way you think. That's why Bible teaching is for correction. Correction means to adjust your mindset, to correct your thinking pattern, because right thinking will produce right living. Right thinking will produce right living. Look at what Brother Paul said to Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse 15. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needed not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. That word study is the Greek word spoudazo. It means be eager, be diligent. In other words, he is giving you a responsibility that you must show that you have been approved of God. You, the teacher or the preacher of the word, must show that you have been approved of God. That is, you have been tested by God. And after God tested you, he has seen you to be proper. You must show that in Bible teaching or preaching. You must show that God has tested you already, and that with God you are proper. So in your communication, that quality of God's approval must be seen in the diligence and in the weight of your communication of the scriptures. So do not go on the pulpit when you are not fully prepared. And when you are teaching and something comes to mind that you didn't prepare for before teaching, as much as possible, don't say it. Just keep it somewhere, so that when you get back home, you do diligence with it. Then in the next service, you can now say it with sound exegesis. A Bible teacher is not a showman. He's not looking for how to show off. A Bible teacher is a careful trainer, a careful nourisher, a careful educator, because his intent is not to show off. His intent is not about him. In Bible teaching, we're not thinking of us. In Bible teaching is our audience that we have in mind, and we want to make sure that they are fed to the point of growth. They are fed to the point of growth. That's a scriptural truth. Okay, so you find quality time, you prepare, so you present it better. Remember, Jesus is not coming tomorrow. We still have time. People will still come to service next time. So you have enough time to still say that thing with sound explanation. And don't quickly preach what you have heard that you have not understood. Don't quickly preach what you have heard that you have not understood. Look at the word in Philippians chapter 2 verse 12. Wherefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. With fear and trembling. Let's examine the word fear and trembling. But even before we examine the word fear and trembling, you know that scripture is the scripture that the legalists are always using. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. And they are not paying attention to the tenses. It didn't say work for your salvation. You're not working for, you're working out. You cannot work out what is not in. So salvation is already in. Working out means grow to a point where what you carry inside is felt outside by those around you. All right, so the word fear and trembling. Let me give you a background of Philippians 2:12. Paul was saying, when I am not there, let me see your obedience. That is, in my absence, when I'm not around, let me see your obedience. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. That's when I am not present with you. That's the background. 1 Corinthians chapter 2 verse 3. And I was with you in weakness and in fear and in much trembling. Ephesians chapter 6 verse 5. Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in singleness of your hearts as unto Christ. 2 Corinthians chapter 7 verse 15. And his inward affection is more abundant toward you, whilst he remembered the obedience of you all, how with fear and trembling you received him. Check. Did they all say fear and trembling? Did they all say that? Okay. So that word fear and trembling means sincerity. What he is saying is, when I am not there, be sincere. Serve your masters with sincerity. I was with you in much sincerity. So what Brother Paul was teaching in those contexts was sincerity. So fear and trembling implies sincerity. How that? With fear and trembling you receive him. That is, you have received him in sincerity. There is sincerity in what is being done, which is where you have single-mindedness. Single-mindedness. That is one-mindedness or total devotion. I'm not saying fear and trembling means sincerity. I'm saying when it is used to imply sincerity. Read the context of what he's saying in 1 Corinthians 2:3, Ephesians 6:5, 2 Corinthians 7:15, where we read. You will see exactly that. Now that's why he gives you the background that when I am there, do not just obey in my presence, but obey also in my absence. That is the true mark of sincerity. That the same way you obey in my presence, when I am absent, you still obey. It shows that you are sincere. Now, I'm just showing you a proper way of study. All right, so when you see such a word, you look for the corroboration of such a word.